Welcome to Classical Schmassical, the anti-classical classical music podcast. Tune in every Saturday, or roughly every Saturday, as we discuss, deconstruct, and dissect what it means to be a musician in the modern world. Welcome to Season 3. I'm your host, Alexa Letourneau. I use any pronouns, and our guest this week is Robert Dillon.
Hello.
Hi, so excited to have you on. This is really a wonderful start to Season 3, and I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Thanks. Yeah, thrilled to be here.
Yeah. So I think that you're probably best known, or at least I know you best, for your work with the Ensemble Third Coast Percussion. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you came to be involved with the group and how it's kind of shaped your career.
Totally. Yeah. So at this point, Third Coast Percussion is really the sort of primary aspect of my career, and all four of us were in the group. We started the group in about 2005. The four of us who were all percussion students from Northwestern, either recently having graduated or near the end of our degrees. And we loved percussion ensemble music. We had played a lot of it at our time at Northwestern, as well as other places we'd gone to school, and just wanted to see it reach a broader audience outside of the academic world. So yeah. Initially, it sort of grew out of some opportunities that some of us had while playing in the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, and then after one season of doing some community engagement work that way, Third Coast really became its own independent ensemble in summer of 2005, and it's been a slow build ever since. Sure. So yeah, since 2013, it's been like our full-time job for all four of us who are in the ensemble, for myself and David Skidmore, Sean Connors, and Peter Martin. All of us have administrative roles within the group, as well as being the performers in the group. But this is really, the primary thrust of what we do, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I know that for myself, like, I'm still a student, and some of my most fun things are like the ensembles with my friends. So like seeing something grow out of that is especially exciting.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's something really fantastic about being able to just like start something with your friends and turn it into a career. I mean, there's obviously a lot that goes into it, but it's I think we all feel really fortunate to be able to do it. Yeah. And we have the family, the Third Coast family has expanded over time. We have three amazing staff members now as well: Reba Caffarelli, Rebecca McDaniel, and Colin Campbell, who are also amazing humans, and really, like, people we're so lucky to have working with us on our team.
That's wonderful. So I know, doing a little bit of my pre-research for this, that you're not only a Grammy-winning ensemble, which is amazing, but also a Grammy-nominated composer collective. I'm wondering if you can talk about like a little bit about what that means, what that structure is like, and how these two like labels kind of play with each other.
Totally, yeah. So all of us in Third Coast have always liked to compose, and have composed to varying degrees independently. And so that's been, an important part of Third Coast's repertoire, even since the beginning, was works that were composed by members of the ensemble. Yeah. But maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, we started in on doing projects where the four of us were co-composing works together. And so we've had a handful of projects now that were explicitly set up to be that, where it would be, the four of us co-composing a piece. And I think that process has been really informed by all the commissions and collaborations that we've done with other composers over the years. It's been so educational for us to work with some really amazing music creators over the 17 years that Third Coast has been around, and to learn from their creative process and also their collaborative process. I think we point to Augusta Reed Thomas a lot as a really important influence. She was always a great mentor for our ensemble, and we loved, she shared just a lot of great insight in the early days. And then, maybe about 7 years or so into the group's existence, she wrote her first piece for us. And then there have been a number of works that she's composed for us since. But the process of working with her was so collaborative, and we really appreciated she was so generous with her time and just wanted to spend a lot of time with us, trying things, making sketches, bringing in tons of content, having us read it, experiment with it, improvise, try things differently. And then she would like leave a session having brought us 20 minutes of music. She would throw out 17 minutes of it. Amazing. Keep like the 3 best minutes, and then develop that, come back the next time, and sort of repeat that process. So that was I think sort of between that as like the most ideal collaboration, and just all the other experiences that we had with composers of all sorts, and understanding how much we could bring to that process, just because
Mhm.
percussion is such a unique uh,
Yeah.
beast. Like there's so many instruments that are all so unique. Every organization or ensemble kind of has their own collection of instruments, and no one has a comprehensive knowledge of everything.
Yeah.
And even a composer who's very, very experienced writing for percussion, um, there's things that we know about percussion that they don't.
Yeah.
And so we've really, since that initial experience with Augusta, probably about a decade ago, we've really leaned into the collaborative aspect of
Mhm.
commissioning, and I think through that developed some sort of skills of communication and collaboration that have helped us to figure out how to compose together as a quartet.
Yeah.
And so there have been some projects now, in addition to the things where either a project where one of us is composing a work or we're collaboratively composing works as a quartet. We've also had a couple projects where, as part of a larger project, there's other composers also involved. So we did this really fun project with Sergio Assad, the legendary classical guitarist, and his
Yeah.
daughter Clarice, who's just an incredible composer and improviser and pianist, multi-instrumentalist, vocalist. We did a project with them that was like a 12 movement cycle. And so they each composed 4 movements, and each member of Third Coast composed a movement of that. And
So
there was
cool.
a lot of collaboration that went into that too. But it was cool to be able to compose not just for the 4 of us,
Yeah.
but to compose for a larger set of forces, including 2 of the greatest performers who are alive right now.
Right.
It was very humbling, and even more recently, we did a project that we'll be touring later this season, with Flutronics, that incredible
Yeah.
duo of Natalie Joachim and Alison Loggins-Hall. That was a co-composed work with all 6 of us collaboratively composing in the piece.
Yeah.
And I think again we learned so much from that process, and it was a real joy to be able to co-create, um, even on that larger scale.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm a flutist composer myself, and I
Cool.
always feel like it's this weird relationship playing a flutist's music or a non-flutist
Mm.
music. And I imagine that's just like completely blown out of the water when you're working with percussion because like nobody knows what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, for well, like a lot of things in the classical music world, there are things, people get sort of siloed, people get labeled as being, oh, they're a
Definitely.
percussion
Yeah.
composer. They just write for percussion. Or,
Right.
there are a lot of percussionist composers, and people sort of think about them in a certain way sometimes.
Hmm.
There's sort
Hmm.
of a stereotype of a percussionist who
Definitely.
writes music. And I think everyone brings their own unique
Hmm.
set of experiences and stylistic things. And I think there are things you understand about the technique of your instrument that
Right.
can sometimes stand in the way of the music making, or sometimes it can really empower the music
Yeah.
making and open up possibilities. And I think, just like any other composer, people have to find their path, but there's something really, uh, I mean, I think everyone should compose for their instrument at least a little bit. Even,
Yeah.
even if they have no interest in really being a quote unquote composer,
Sure.
um, that experience of just like writing something for
Yeah.
your own instrument as a starting point, I think it changes the way you think about all
Hmm.
the other music you play, right? It sort of puts the
Yeah.
the humanity back into the dots on the
Right.
page in a way.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really lovely idea and also like super important to consider like, hey, if the music that you're wanting to play isn't quite there, write it yourself. I think it's a
Yeah,
super empowering process and collaboration can be such a huge part of that. Yeah,
absolutely.
and that's one of the things that I find really exciting about your ensemble and the work that you do is working with all of these new composers. Um, I'm wondering because I was looking and see that you're doing a lot of Philip Glass premieres, which is like so cool and amazing, and that it said you had commissioned his first percussion ensemble piece. So I'm interested how you pick composers to work with and sort of what sort of things you're looking for, especially when they don't have that repertoire of like, oh, I like the way that this person writes for percussion ensemble. Like,
Yeah, right.
how does that selection process go, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I think there are. I will say that for the most part, we don't have a super rigid system for
Sure,
exactly how
sure.
we choose commissioning. I think some organizations, especially larger organizations, maybe by necessity, have a very specific,
Mhm.
structured way that they choose, their commissions.
Yeah.
I think we have a general sense of, on, I would say generally we premiere at least 6 new pieces every year.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's quite a bit more than that, but that's, I think, at least kind of a baseline for us. So if we ever feel like we're doing less than that, then we know we're not doing what we want to be doing. And we have, I think we love working with composers and music creators who are at various different places in their careers and in the development of their musical voice. So, and we have a variety of like different activities and things that we do. And so there are sort of different places we can fit some things in. So, there are composers who are really in their prime and are maybe, a legendary composer like Philip Glass. It just felt like, I think we knew based on his vocabulary that if you wrote a percussion ensemble piece, it would be really cool.
Sure.
And percussionists have arranged a lot of Glass over the years. We had arranged some of his work. We thought, this is wild. He was at that point, in his late 70s, when we started talking about this, and he had never written a percussion ensemble piece. And he has written so much music.
Right,
and so we thought we've got to make this happen. So, that's a very special case. There's very few people who are such a household name, within our world. But I think even beyond that, I think we sort of have our eyes open to that question of like, who are the like really super well-known historic musical voices and if they haven't written a percussion ensemble piece yet, like that's on us. We need to make that happen if we can. We're in a better place than most to make that happen. So, so we should, but also we get really excited about, folks who are very early in their career and are sort of finding their voice and sort of maybe finding a way to make them percussion composers for life.
Yeah.
And so we have a program we run called the Currents Creative Partnership that we've been doing for almost 10 years now. And it's sort of, here's a cheap plug for all the music creators out there, but it's actually the deadline is to apply for this year is coming up, although it's sort of a rolling deadline. You can apply anytime, but we sort of start reviewing each year's applications after October 31st, I believe. But it's totally free to apply. It's a very simple application. We want to make this something that's easy for folks to apply to and something which is not, which is not funded by the people who are applying for it. But, we find other funding sources to make it happen. And every year we select a handful of music creators to work with on building a new project. And again, it's a very collaborative process. So it's not just write us a piece and send it to us when it's done and we'll play it. It's really like, give us an idea for a piece, something that's on your mind, something you'd like to explore in a new work. And then if for the composers that we select, we meet with them multiple times throughout the process to do workshops and try out ideas, kind of give them a tour of our instrument collection, and help them develop the piece using as much of our expertise and experience as we can offer to the process. So that's a program that's geared towards kind of emerging music creators, although, that's very flexible and very open. Sometimes it might be people who have had a pretty, who are a little bit older, but maybe are reaching in a new direction artistically or haven't written a percussion ensemble piece before, and still it's a new experience for them. So that's a program that we have been able to gradually expand a little bit over the years, thanks to some of our like fundraising support and things like that. And we love doing, because we obviously the folks that we have selected, as you well know, there are like so many amazing music creators out there. Sure. And every year when we review this, it's inspiring and overwhelming. Honestly, sometimes it's just like there's so many brilliant people doing great work, and it's so the people that we end up selecting to work with each year are always folks we're just like so excited to work with, really creative people. But even the process of reviewing the applications is fun, and I think one of the side benefits for the people who apply is we're going to listen to their music. We're going to get to know their music a bit more, and we've certainly added some existing works to our repertoire because we heard it as part of someone's application. And even if we didn't necessarily select that person, we were like, you know what, let's make a note about this piece. Let's play that piece sometime. And then it sort of cycles into our repertoire. So, so that's sort of the extreme ends of it, is we sort of have folks who are in many cases at the beginning of their career or writing for percussion, in a more exploratory fashion, finding their voice. And then folks who are really big name composers who we are fortunate to be able to add to our repertoire, because I think like what you're saying, as percussionists in particular, like adding to our repertoire is super important. I think for the future of our art form and the, we are, as we like to say, we are unburdened by the hundreds of years of music by the likes of Beethoven and Brahms.
Right.
and it's great. I think we love like the unique place that we inhabit
Mhm.
in the concert music and performing arts world. But I feel like the feasibility of what we do to like create an ensemble like Third Coast and to turn it into a touring thing that we're performing
Yeah,
really regularly and has become our careers depended on the amount of repertoire that like existed up to that point,
right.
and certainly now has benefited from all the commissions
Yeah,
and collaborations that we've done since. But I think the next generation and moving forward, it just keeps benefiting from all this new repertoire that gets created, and we are thrilled to be a part of that process. It's
yeah.
really invigorating for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know I talk about it with my composer friends when we're like picking out who we want to write for, and it's like you can go to anybody in the school, and the people that are going to say yes are the electronic musicians, the saxophonists, and the percussionists. And it's because they,
Yeah, yeah, it's always the
it's the
percussionists.
it's the new things that want more rep, and it's really really fun and
Yeah,
exciting as primarily a composer too, to kind of have that relationship with these sort of newer, couple hundred years old is
yeah,
the relationship we have between new and old is like
yeah,
something that
absolutely.
yeah.
But
But I think that's really
yeah, that's a big thing. Yeah,
exciting.
yeah,
You
it feels like we're like creating the future together,
Yeah,
and that's an exciting
exactly.
thing. Um,
It's almost
but
like
to your point, I mean, absolutely, percussion is like like the new thing in
yeah,
classical music, but classical music is like way behind in that way because
right,
percussion is like super old. It's
right,
yeah,
right.
older than anything. So other than
Yeah,
the human voice, I suppose. So
right, right. And I'm interested because you mentioned a couple times like composers that are still finding their voice. And this is like something that if people have heard other episodes of the podcast, I like talk about it all the time because it's my research focus actually is compositional voice. And I'm
cool.
interested, what is it like to kind of hear what's the difference in playing somebody who's a little bit earlier in their career versus somebody who's more established in that aspect of like
Hmm.
voice and individuality or style or however, what does it mean to you as a performer?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Um, I think uh, I think there's a joy to like the moment when the composer is just as surprised as you
Yeah,
are about what's happening. There's something
yeah.
really cool when they are like, "Oh gosh, I've always wanted to try this or that or whatever,"
Mhm.
or like, "I don't know, would this work?" And then you try something and they like play around with it and they start to put it together and they really, I think create something they themselves might not have expected.
Yeah.
Um, but um, yeah, it's interesting because I think every composer is very like unique in the way that they sort of interact with that, and so sometimes you feel like you're working with someone that you feel like, oh, this person has really established their voice, but you can also tell that they are really pushing to find something new, or they're
Mm.
um, still very open to exploring
Yeah.
something that they are not expecting, or to write a piece that sounds nothing like what they've written before. And then there are certain but then sometimes I think a composer, once they feel like, oh, I figured out what my thing is, this is what I do, so I'm gonna just I'll do that for you. And
Sure.
there are times, I think, for us as an ensemble, there we talk about this occasionally with folks that we're going to commission. There are some composers that even people who are have very long careers where like every piece is a surprise. Every
Yeah.
piece is going to be something different, and there's some risk in that, certainly, but
Yeah.
also a lot of excitement. And there are some composers who, if I commission this person, like I know what I'm going to get.
Hmm.
And if you like that, and you sort of are, there are reasons to do that or not do that, I guess, based on what you're
Sure.
looking for out of the process and the project. But if you sometimes it's nice to know what you're going to get from a composer. If you feel like what we really need for this project is
Hmm.
a piece like this, and I think as we've evolved as a group, we have really thought about more and more like where are these things going to get performed and in what
Hmm.
contexts. And so we've got the Currents Creative Partnership. That's a certain collaborative process, and we sort of have a setting and a concert, an annual concert that we premiere those pieces in. and then sometimes they work their way into, other programming as well. But and
Yeah.
then, we have sort of our touring programs that we know we're going to play many times,
Hmm.
dozens, maybe hundreds of times, and it's really cool. I think there are certain things that sort of fit into that. And
Yeah.
then we do a lot of educational work too, a lot of educational performances and presentations for young audiences, and family concerts and everything. And we have um, kind of an all ages education program that we've been playing for almost as long as the group's been around, and it's evolved just a little bit. And a couple of years ago, we were like, you know what? We play this more than probably any other concert program we've ever played. Maybe we should think about rotating in some new music. We could even commission some people for some new music in this.
Sure.
Um, and also there was a real lack of diversity within the program that we had sort of started doing that. So we thought, well, this is a great chance to commission some new works from folks, and they don't have to be huge projects. We're asking someone to write a 5-minute piece that we can play on a pretty specific setup of instruments,
Mhm.
and that we can lug into a elementary school gymnasium anywhere, and like play it down, and kids will go nuts. And
Yeah.
so thinking about all these different places and trying to find, like, for every composer who's out there whose work we really who we really appreciate, like, where's the platform for us to share this music and to get it out to as many
Mhm.
people as possible, and to make the most of this repertoire. So um, that's I forget what the original question was, but but
No, I
hopefully
mean,
that is a
it was
something.
a
Yeah.
very, very interesting and well thought out answer, and also brings me very much into the next thing that I was going to ask about. So great job.
Yeah.
No, I'm really interested in the concerts of like this season. I was going to say upcoming
Yeah.
season, but I know it's already sort of begun with your Chicago
Yeah.
season. So having
Hmm.
just played at the Field Museum, correct? And then also
Yep. Yeah.
as part of your touring season, making a Carnegie Hall debut, I'm really intrigued by the way that different venues impact the music in not just, I mean, definitely accessibility is a huge part of that, but also programming concerns or context.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd love to know how that impacts the way that you feel as a performer, or as somebody who's doing this sort of artistic directing kind of work.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So it's a really exciting season. I mean, we're obviously thrilled. I think everyone is really excited to be back doing more live performances, as well as more just like
Absolutely.
live community engagement, live work with students. It really, this feels like this will be the first season that's, knock on wood, like normal in a way,
Right.
and like we're on the road, we're out there playing shows again, we're on tour, we're playing a lot of different music. It's sort of abnormal still in the sense that because of some things that got postponed the last couple of years, there's a couple of
Sure.
like, oh right, we have one performance of that thing, that one project that was booked in 2019 to do in 2020, and then that was
Absolutely.
going to be the last time we played that concert program for a while, probably. And now it's going to happen in 2022 or 2023, and we're going to, all the stuff we love. But yeah, there's just a lot that goes into preparing different programs, and especially the logistics as a percussion group is something we're always dealing with.
Absolutely.
Every show is a different setup. But yeah, but the Chicago season I think is a special part of that, because that is another place where it feels like, not only is our touring really strong this year, but we put on a season of concerts in Chicago every year, and that's also been a hard thing to really
Mhm.
do reliably and consistently for a few years. And so this is the first year that we really feel like we have a solid Chicago season, and it's actually maybe a more robust Chicago season this season than we've had in a very long time. So
Yeah.
the Field Museum show that we did a couple of weeks ago was a blast. And in terms of the programming aspect, that's a conversation. The Field Museum hasn't done a lot of this kind of programming before.
Yeah.
They're, we had some folks there who knew us and liked what Third Coast does, but there was a
Mhm.
conversation of like, what's a program that has some connection and makes sense
Right.
in this space, and not just the fact that it is this incredible natural history museum, but also just the size of the concert hall and all of these sort of factors. So a lot of the Chicago things, the partnerships like that, are a conversation around programming of what are the things we're doing that we're excited about, and which of those fits best with this particular partner. But then we also do some shows that are really purely self-presented.
Mhm.
And so they're really about us saying, here's the music that we're most excited about that we want to bring to our audience in Chicago,
Mhm.
and we're going to put it on. And it's I one of the things that I love touring is awesome, and we are at the point now where we do go back to places we've been before,
Mhm.
but having like a hometown show, it feels like we can
Yeah,
bring people a really broad range of repertoire, and I think we can go well beyond the like a lot of the places we play, it still feels like people are like, I don't know what to expect from this. What's a
sure.
percussion ensemble, a classical percussion ensemble? What's this going to be like? And we're
Right.
performing, always presenting stuff that we're so excited about, but it always feels there's a little bit of an aspect of like it's an introduction for a lot of people to what we
Mhm.
do, which is great, and we love that it's happening. But it's really cool in Chicago to be able to be like, okay, you know about the music we play. This is our hometown
Sure.
audience, and we're always trying to draw new people into that. But generally speaking, it feels like it's a longer conversation,
Mhm.
and so we can really bring a range of things. So the show that we're doing in December 7th, at the Holtschneider Performance Center, which is at DePaul University, is has a bunch of new repertoire, and I think represents a lot of great things, um, that Third Coast is up to. There's a brand new piece by Missy Mazzoli, which we are so thrilled to be premiering. Missy is just such a wonderful human and brilliant artist, and this is a project that's been in the works for quite a while, so we're excited about the premiere of that one. We also have a brand new piece by Mark Applebaum, who I
Mhm.
think is one of the like most kooky and creative folks out there today. Mark's a great example of like, he has a very deep catalog of music that he's written, but every piece is a surprise.
Yeah,
He's not one where you're like, oh, well, if we ask Mark Applebaum to write a piece, we know exactly what we're going to
right.
get. It's
It's
like,
gonna sound like Mark Applebaum. It could be anything.
it could be, yeah, right. On some level, there's some things about what it will be, or at least what it won't be.
Right.
But I remember we when we started talking to Mark about him writing a piece for us, he we like had a Zoom meeting, and he came in with like an idea that he wanted to pitch to us, or
Mhm.
maybe we had a meeting first where we just talked about like general things, what we were looking for a piece in terms of
Mhm.
duration and all these other things, and then like a week later he was like, can we Zoom again? I have some ideas. So we got online again, and Mark was like, okay, I have this great idea, and he like pitched us this concept for a piece that I don't even remember what it was, but it was very kooky. It was very creative, and we were like, that sounds amazing. He's like, yeah, I know, isn't it great? But I decided that's not what I'm going to do because I had this other idea, and then he like
Amazing.
and then he laid that all out for us, and we were like, that sounds even better, Mark. That's brilliant. And he's like, yes, but I'm also not going to do that because then the idea I really want to do is, and then he finally told us the third idea. We're like, that's amazing. So already there's two other pieces he could have written that I think
Right.
would have been real winners. So yeah, we're so psyched about that. So we've got Mark's new piece, we've got Missy's new piece, we've got a new piece, the four of us in Third Coast co-composed,
Mhm.
which is really exciting and sort of reflecting on modern day rituals and meditations, I guess, in a way. I think there's sort of a
Mhm.
theme running through that show, and it evolved in really interesting ways. There are a lot of influences that came into it in different ways, from kind of
Sure.
rudimental drumming utilized in a very different way, that has a very different energy to it. Um,
Yeah.
David from Third Ghost has been really interested in modular synthesizers for a while, so
Mhm.
he's been building all this stuff. So there's some electronic stuff in that, um, and a really fun piece. And then we've also on that program we're also doing a piece by one of our favorite Chicago collaborators, Ayanna Woods, who's just like a really wonderful composer and performer that we've worked with on a couple of projects now. So we've got a piece of hers called Triple Point that she wrote for our Currents Creative Partnership a few years ago,
Mhm.
that we're about to record, and so we're going to be performing that on that show as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's gonna be a really fun one, and that's a program that really is like, what do we want to play?
Right.
What do we
Yeah.
want to do? And then, similarly, next at the very end of the season, we'll be doing our annual Currents concert, which is sort of our opportunity to explore and try new things and push ourselves, push our own limits. And that's usually where we premiere the pieces from our Currents creative partnerships. We've got three fantastic partners we're working with this year who are, in the midst of creating new pieces for that. And a little bit before that, our other Chicago show this year is our biggest touring show right now, called Metamorphosis,
Mhm.
which is a collaboration with some incredible movement artists. It's choreography by Lil Buck and John Buggs, who work together under the sort of banner of Movement Art Is, and some other great dancers that they work with, who've been
Mm.
touring that show with us. So we'll be doing that at the Harris Theater, which is very exciting for us. That's a huge venue right in downtown Chicago, and we feel like this is the project to bring there. And really, I
Yeah.
think it has a broad reach, so much great impact. That's a program we've been doing virtually and live now over the last couple of years, and that's the project we'll be bringing to Carnegie Hall in January as
Yeah.
well. So those are kind of some big landmark things for us this season, which
Yeah.
is just it's really exhilarating.
That's
Yeah.
so exciting. Yeah, I remember because Missy Mazzoli was my teacher for the last 2 years, and I
Yeah,
remember her
awesome.
talking about like having these projects in the works, and it was like, oh, I've like heard a little bits and pieces about this piece, and I'm so excited to see where it goes and how it ends up being performed. I think that's gonna be, I don't
Awesome.
know,
Yeah,
uniquely
what was Missy
exciting.
like as a teacher? I'm sure
It
it
was
was like
amazing.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I literally I learned so much in the last 2 years. Just really, really incredible teacher.
Yeah.
I think that in composition, teachers are especially not one size fits all. No teacher is one
Yeah.
size fits all, but composition I feel like is a uniquely personalized thing. And there's this kind of element of there are people who are really great teachers and there are people who are really great composers. And
Hmm.
not many people are both. And I feel like
Yeah,
Missy is one of the people who really, really is both of those things. And
totally.
I just
I
left
believe
every
it.
lesson feeling like I was walking on clouds. It was so great.
Cool. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm also really interested in the metamorphosis or metamorphoses,
Yep.
metamorphosis,
Metamorphosis.
metamorphosis
Singular, I
program.
suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we but no, I'm really interested in the metamorphosis program. I just wrote my first percussion ensemble piece, and one of the things
Cool.
that I was working a lot with was kind of envisioning this sort of inherent physicality of playing
Mm,
percussion music. Because like flutes, you just kind of like push buttons, but like you're out there, movement is a part
yeah,
of your craft. And
totally.
I remember in one of my lessons, Missy said something along the lines of like writing for percussion is especially magical because like when they play together, you turn into the most in sync dance troupe you could ever imagine. And
Mm.
I just loved that visual. And I'm curious, like, A, is that something that you ever think about as a performer? And how does it change or relate to working with movement artists? And do they feed off of each other? Or is it like not anything that
Totally.
maybe I'm making false connections here, but
No, not at all. I think that's a great observation. I think to your point, there's a very visible physicality to
Mhm.
percussion playing, right? Just about every sound we make, you can see the sound being made,
Yeah,
which is, like you said, in contrast to most woodwind or string instruments, there's
right.
like very small movements that
Yeah.
create the different, create different sounds. But it doesn't have the physicality is very external. Like I think there's a lot of physicality that's very internal to a wind instrument, right?
Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
lot of understanding of your own body and your own breath and all of these things that maybe we're not as in tune with.
Sure.
But from an audience standpoint, people can really
Mhm.
see every sound being made, see the instrument in most cases, and I think that's something we really think about in all of our programs is like um, it will be different for people if they can see the instruments we're using.
Hmm.
And so thinking about how we set up the stage is a thing. We've like really worked to incorporate wherever we can some like video cameras on stage in shows so people can get like close-up views of
Yeah.
instruments and stuff because it's often, yeah, like you said, people will see us moving, that's great, but if people see the instruments, that I think always
Hmm.
like takes things to a different level for most people. We've just got a lot of really positive feedback over the years once we started doing that, so it's
Hmm.
something, and that's been an advantage for like the live stream and video recording stuff that we've been able to do the last few years. But when there is like a choreography to being a percussionist, definitely. And
Yeah.
so um, you have to think about the logistics of like, where do I need to be when?
Right.
And so there's that aspect. And we end up, I think, rehearsing all of those sort of things just as much as the music. It's
Hmm.
like there's a lot of times in rehearsal we say, hey, can we go back and rehearse that spot one more time? I just need to work on how I'm getting from the marimba to the chimes or
Yeah.
whatever. Because right now it's not happening, or right now it's happening, but it's not. The way I'm moving is not matching what's going on musically,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so that I don't, we don't want to like take people out of the moment
Right.
or muddy the sort of energy of the musical content by
Hmm.
moving in a way that's like completely,
Yeah. You're
anti
not running across the
what's the name?
stage with this nice bowed vibe going. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Yep. Or just like stressing out the audience of like, is he
Right.
gonna make it in time?
Yeah.
Um, there's all that stuff. And then yeah, the collaborations that we've done with dance have I have like taken that to another level. And
Hmm.
I think honestly, any multimedia collaborations, because we've done a lot of things maybe with video as well,
Hmm.
with pre-existing video art and things like that. There's always a question of like, I think we always want to feel like there's a moment when people can watch us because some people just like want to watch us. And we've gotten, heard from some audience members in the past, maybe in some of those video, they're like, you know what, I stopped watching the screen after a while and I was just looking at you guys, or
Hmm.
a dance project. And they say, yeah, I wish there could have been a moment I wanted to watch you all, but I was really focused on the dancers. I wish
Yeah.
there had been a moment I could have just watched you. And so
Interesting.
keeping that in mind in the balance of a program, I think that's one of the things that's worked out really beautifully with the Metamorphosis show, because it's usually just it's two performers, two dance performers who each have kind of a couple of solo moments and some duo movements, but it's maybe slightly less than half of the show that they're on stage. It's sort of they're coming and
Hmm.
going, and so and there's also lighting incorporated, and so there's
Sure.
sort of a through line and something that evolves over the course of the show,
Yeah.
in terms of those characters. But also there's a lot of time where it's like the music is the focus for some of the
Hmm.
sections of the show. But I think it always gets us thinking about how we're moving on stage,
Hmm.
and sort of how we're presenting, and the balance of where people's attention is being drawn. We've actually, on a few projects, both Metamorphosis and a couple of previous multimedia projects, Paddle to the Sea, and a project called Wild Sound we did with Glenn Kochi. We've worked with this fantastic stage director, a woman named Leslie Danzig, who works primarily in the theater world, and have brought her in to work with us on these shows to be the sort of outside eye and to give us to help us sort of figure out how does it all fit together, and to think about these questions. I mean, she knew what questions to ask that we didn't even know what to ask,
Yeah.
in terms of like understanding how we're directing the audience's attention to different places, and how we're drawing the eye to one place or another, and when we're on stage,
Mm.
are we a character, or are we being ourselves? And I think it's deepened the conversation we bring to every performance now. But Leslie is just brilliant, and so I think she has opened us up to maybe thinking more broadly about the way the performance exists on stage. And I think
Yeah.
that is factors a lot into any program with dance, for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I know this specific choreography is more from like a street dance tradition. I
Totally.
I know we're like a little bit short on time, and maybe this is a huge question to drop right at the end. But I'm interested if like bringing in that tradition or collaborating there has any impact on your relationship with genre. I know we said like classical percussion ensemble, which is maybe in a way a little bit of an oxymoron already.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you see your relationship with genre, and does it ever shift based on context or anything like that?
Totally. Yeah, I think the when people ask us about like the genre, or like what kind of music, what kind of musician am I, or whatever,
Right.
it gets like harder to answer, I think, every year, because
Yeah.
um, I think for me personally, and probably for the rest of Third Coast, like I think our roots are always going to be in the classical world, and certainly the majority of our training. But
Hmm.
um, it's a pretty, to your point, it's a pretty fuzzy line between classical and everything else as a percussionist,
Hmm.
partially because of the sort of shorter history of percussion ensemble as part of that, but also because the sound worlds and the influence and relationship with all the other genre and instruments that evolved in other traditions, or have sort of evolved moving back and forth between some traditions,
Hmm.
and between different styles. And so I feel like in a lot of ways, like a collaboration like this for Metamorphosis worked really well for us as a percussion ensemble, maybe
Hmm.
more than it would for a lot of other classical groups,
Yeah.
because I think the music sort of eschews genre a little bit.
Hmm.
Again, it feels like it's maybe the roots are in classical, but we've got a couple of arrangements of Philip Glass works, which I think we think of Philip Glass now as being a very classical composer, but I think when he was starting, he felt like he was pretty outside the box of what was
Yeah.
expected of a contemporary classical composer at that point. We've got a really awesome new piece by Tayande Braxton,
Mhm.
who, Ty is, you know, 1 foot in the classical world, I think, but still in like a very, I don't know, rebellious
Right.
boundary breaking sort of way.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and then we've got a whole sort of collection of pieces by Jay Lin, who's an electronic music producer who has sort of been moving, I think, from like her roots are more in like footwork, which is a Chicago dance style, electronic music, and she's been really branching out more and more into, I think, genreless music as well, and I think has developed a really great relationship with the performing arts and sort of contemporary classical world as well. But I think there's no way you listen to, for most of her music, there's no way you listen to it and don't hear the like dance music
Yeah.
influence or roots from that. And so,
Sure.
similarly, Old Buck and John Boog's, like they are coming out of these street dance styles. That's where their roots are, but they are also really kind of omnivorous artists who are very interested in taking their art forms to a new place, bringing their art forms to a new stage,
Hmm.
and really showing the world what their art form is capable of, and
Yeah.
like the sort of storytelling and social message potential that exists within this like incredibly virtuosic and very physical style. I think they do an amazing job of sort of both utilizing the things that immediately grab people's attention about
Yeah.
this movement, and it's superhuman. I mean, I still
Hmm.
watch videos of the performances, and I kind of can't believe it's real, the things
Yeah.
these guys are doing with their bodies, and just the sort of some of the illusions that your eye can't quite exactly
Mhm.
process. But then also like really understanding the like physical, the form, and the just really broad sense of beauty and of
Mhm.
storytelling. I think is something that
Yeah.
they're very very interested in as artists. And so I think it creates this. I feel very fortunate. I feel like it's a very successful project in that it created this space where everyone could acknowledge their roots, own their roots, and explore
Hmm.
where else they could go with it.
Yeah.
And that feels, I think, for all of us in Third Coast, that feels awesome. That
Yeah.
feels like right at home.
Yeah. That sounds really, really wonderful. Before I let you go, is there anything else that you're doing at the moment that you'd like to promote or talk about really briefly?
Oh gosh, there's so many exciting things. We're on the road again, so check out thirdcoastpercussion.com for all of our upcoming tour dates and Chicago dates. Um, yeah, keep an eye. If you're in Chicago or around Chicago, please come see those Chicago concerts. December 7th at DePaul, and then May 2nd is that Harris Theater show, Metamorphosis. January 20th, which also is my birthday, is our Carnegie Hall debut. So definitely, if you're a New York person, check that out. And depending when this episode goes live on
Going
October
live
3rd.
tomorrow.
Oh, great. Well, in that case, the perfect opportunity to plug the TCP Fall Benefit, which is our annual fundraiser. This will be our first time doing a in-person fundraising event in about 3.5 years. And actually, Missy Mazzoli is going to be our featured guest. She's going to be there talking about her
Oh,
new
great.
piece. We're going to give a little preview something of the piece, and we're just thrilled about that. There's a small amount of seats left. It's pretty full, but we've got just a handful of tickets left. So anyone who's in the Chicago area, please come
Yeah.
out to see that as well. There's details about that on our website as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so, so, so much to Robert for joining us here at Classical Schmassical. If you at home enjoyed the show, there is plenty more where that came from, and make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you'd like to continue this conversation, join the Discord linked in the description, or visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/classicalschmassical, Schmassical, SCHMASSICAL. And remember, as always, stay classy and questionably classical.